Alaska Garden. I'm with UAF Cooperative Extension Service and Tanana Chiefs Conference. I'm here in Homer, Alaska, checking out all the cool things farmers are doing here to extend the season, like high tunnels, hoop houses, low tunnels, and also the other cool tools they're using as small-scale farmers. Hi, I'm with Carey Restino here at Homer Hilltop Farms, and we're going to talk about season extension and the various high tunnels and hoop houses she has here on the farm, and kind of how she got into farming.
Glad you're here.
So, Carey, how did high tunnels help you farm here in Homer and kind of provide a season extension for you?
Well, early on, there's a lot of wind here in this particular plot, and early on I saw some other people doing some pretty neat things that weren't very expensive. So I started out with just regular PVC hoop houses like this one we're standing in right now. And then slowly through the NRCS grant program, I was able to put up some bigger high tunnels. And they've made a tremendous difference on our entire operation. And now we've evolved into commercial sales, which, was not our original intent, but the extension allows for us to grow things at a much faster and more efficient rate.
Because you're in a little bit colder area of Homer up here on Diamond Ridge, so sounds like you have a longer winter.
We do. We have a longer winter, and also it just doesn't heat up as much up here. So we're at about 1,200 feet here, and it's about a month more of snow on the ground. So the high tunnels are wonderful, especially in the shoulder season. And there's some things they're good for and some things that aren't so great. So we'll get into all that.
As far as crops?
Yeah, crops, and also just different times of year when things can grow well.
So can you tell me a little bit about this high tunnel? It's pretty basic. It sounds like it didn't cost very much money to build.
Yeah, so these are just PVC, regular materials you can find in any grocery store. And early on I went out to a friend's house where they had something like this put up and thought, well, I can do this. And so I went out, and it's anchored into the ground with rebar that you put the tubes of PVC over, and then you just pull 6 mil plastic over the top of that, just regular construction stuff. And it works great. And in fact, in some situations it works better than the larger tunnels where all the heat goes up into the air there.
So
the shorter, it's more consistent temperature-wise.
And then you've just got purlins screwed on.
Yeah, real basic.
The PVC pipe.
Real basic. The first one that I put up, we just had sandbags anchoring all the plastic down. We didn't even screw it in with furring strips. Now we do a little bit more, but it's not great in that it's not very long lasting. And
it's not quite as good in the wind, it sounds like.
Right, and things just fall apart. So as you evolve as a farmer and you realize how much time you waste trying to hold together things that aren't great, you start investing in things that work better.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, let's put on the plastic.
All right, let's give it a go. A little bit more there.
And then you just anchor it with the sandbags and logs and things?
Yeah, we put furring strips on after it gets nice and tight. We'll screw that all in.
Oh, okay.
But you have to get it pretty tight to keep the rain from pooling.
But and do you take this off each winter too?
Oh yeah,
it's not
for sure.
Sturdy enough to...
In fact, you don't want it even to get an inch of snow.
Oh yeah.
It's we've had tunnels that you see the October snow and you definitely have to get out there right away and take that
okay.
snow out.
Well,
But
great. Well, that was easy enough to put the plastic on. Let's go check out the caterpillar tunnel.
great, okay.
So this is a caterpillar tunnel here that you have. It looks a little beefier than the PVC that you use to make your other hoop house.
Yep, so this is definitely an upgrade. We got these from Farmer's Friend last year. They're 3 pieces of metal, so they come on a regular pallet. And the way they're strung together is with a strap that holds the tension. This is still being put back together after the winter, but then the plastic skins over the side, and you can push the plastic up and ventilate from the bottom up. So it's a fairly inexpensive way of getting yourself into a plastic covered enclosure.
And you can make them any length, or?
Yeah, they have up to 100 feet. I think it's probably limited by the size of the length of the plastic, but they are pretty versatile, and a lot of farmers use them to start their crops off, and then they remove them. So they're just anchored by a piece of rebar in the ground, so you can pull those up without disturbing your crops underneath, and then move them to another plot and start something else.
And so this provides a little bit of stability to the structure.
It does, and if you're not trying to keep it up through the winter, it's probably reasonable. Some people have some issues with wind, and the latest models actually have a metal pipe that goes along the top for more stability.
And then you also anchor the plastic to this.
That's right.
As well.
And that's one of the issues I've had with it. If you've got the plastic coming out like a big Tootsie Roll, your access is supposed to be in through the side, but as you can see, we put mesh up along the side to keep rodents, cats, dogs, rabbits out of there, and so that's not really a good access for us, so we're going to modify this a little bit.
And did you say you had problems with water pooling on the sides too?
Right, so the way it works is there are these little metal hooks that hold the plastic up, and if you have a big rainstorm, the water pulls up, and water's really heavy.
Yeah.
So sometimes we've come out and there's a lot of weight on that structure. Yeah.
And so how do you hold the plastic up to ventilate?
Well, I'll show you. So this little grommet here holds everything up, and it folds out of the way, so you can let your plastic go down. Or you pull it up here, and the plastic all pulls up from the bottom and sits right there.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Looks
Works
like a really great high tunnel design.
Yeah, it's affordable and efficient and pretty easy to get into.
Well, let's go check out your larger high tunnel.
Great.
So this is your large high tunnel here?
That's correct. This is a 2,100 square foot high tunnel, and it's been up for 7 years. Was the first one that we put up after we graduated from our PVC hoop houses. And it's a pretty beefy structure. A lot of the high tunnels that go up are have a lot smaller pipes and framework.
It looks really solid.
This is a good one.
And it's a Gothic style?
Gothic style arch, so it does shed the snow somewhat, but not all the time. And in fact, on heavy snow years, we have to spend quite a lot of time clearing the sides and making sure the snow can shed.
Because you leave the plastic on all winter.
We do now. The first few years, there was no way I could keep the snow off it, so I just took the plastic off each year. And this particular kind of plastic is 10 mil, and it has reinforcement in it, which is really good for if you're planning to take your high tunnel cover off.
And that probably extends your season even more, because then there's no snow in here in the spring.
Right, exactly. And that's the reason we started leaving it on, is that it just makes a huge difference if you don't have to deal with 4 feet of snow that you need to melt.
So how much does it extend your season?
Well, I think that probably at least a month and a half on each side. Things still grow slowly in the very beginning. You can't change the fact that the soil temperature is still really cold in the spring. There's plenty of frost in it. So it takes a while for the soil to warm up enough, and then you start to see some real growth.
And it sounds like it doesn't hold much heat during the night either.
No, really, actually, people have studied that, and in fact, because of the humidity in here, it's actually sometimes colder in the tunnels than it is outside. But some things really fare very well. This crop of arugula here actually got overwintered. It was a little bit of a surprise, but there are some arugulas that have super long tap roots. So that started coming back, and it's fantastic. I mean, you can tell it's way ahead of a lot of the other stuff. Yeah.
That's great.
But the thing about that arugula is when we planted it originally, it was really pretty hot. It was a second planting and maybe in mid-July, and I think it was too hot for it. So there's a lot of crops sometimes that need to be outside in the middle of the summer, that this is not the best growing conditions.
Right. And you've got mostly cool season crops in here now.
Right.
In May.
But then this particular bed of lettuces does better than some of these cooler season crops like the Asian greens. This bed of a particular variety of mixed lettuces went all the way through the summer and was pretty happy in here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. So in the summer, your problem is that it can get too hot in here. So how do you deal with that?
Well, we have drop-down sides, which I like better than roll-up sides because they keep the cold air off of the greens themselves, especially in the shoulder season. But when we drop those down, it goes down about to halfway down the side walls on both sides, and we get cross ventilation. And most of the time, it's 55, 60 degrees outside. So as long as there's a little breeze to get things going, that usually cools things down.
Did you have to design those drop-down sides, or?
That's a Farm Tech implement, and this is a Farm Tech tunnel.
Okay.
So it came with this drop-down side option, but then when I got other tunnels that didn't, I bought the same hardware for it.
Great.
Yeah.
And then, so as far as access to the tunnel, this is a little easier than, say, getting in your Caterpillar tunnel.
Yep. But you do lose a bit of heat up in the top there.
Because they're higher.
Yep. And that makes more of a difference in the shoulder season.
Okay. And then for tilling in here, you just till with a rototiller and you bring it through that larger door down there?
No, you can actually fit my tiller through there, but I'm mostly no-till.
Okay.
Yeah, so I use a broad fork and a tilther and a bunch of other tools.
Okay, great. Anything else that you'd like to talk about with this high tunnel?
Well, the one issue always with high tunnels is that you don't get any rain, so you obviously have to invest quite a bit in your water system, and keeping that up and running is always a constant expense and struggle. And also, you have to do a lot with weed mitigation, and that's been a large learning curve, figuring all that out over the time, but there's ways to do it that it works really well.
And then also with keeping the plastic on, you don't have the advantages of the rain or snow to flush out anything in the soil.
Exactly. I think anytime you deviate from what nature does, you create some problems. And we have issues with some of our crops, especially tomatoes, with mold, especially in August when it starts raining all the time. So you have to constantly be ahead of that, and then figuring out different varieties of plants that work really well in these kinds of conditions. Salanova lettuces, for example, their head lettuces are great, but some other iceberg lettuces in this kind of environment kind of mold in the center, or head lettuces rather, not iceberg. But so different varieties work differently in this kind of humid environment.
Well, it's really great to hear about all these different types of season extension technologies you're using, and kind of the advantages and disadvantages of each of them.
Well, it's definitely all been a game changer for us, and like we were saying on the other tunnel, preventing wind and pests. We've even have issues sometimes with birds eating our lettuces.
Yeah.
I guess they're that good. So inside the tunnel, you have a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes a difference.
Well, great.